Good evening to all. I warmly welcome you to our CellTalk webinar. In today's session, Numer will be talk on ChatGPT and his experiences with ChatGPT. Our speaker Numer is a clinical content writer at Renix. He is responsible for writing scientific medical white papers and blogs. His work is centered around making complex scientific concepts accessible to lay people. He is currently pursuing PharmD at Lahore University. His writing at Renix focuses on precision medicine for cancer patients. Numer is currently working on gene map projects and delivering scientific content that aims to provide gene-centric information for various diseases and their treatments. Renix has allowed him to gain leadership in various projects related to content. So without further ado, I would like to invite Numer to take over the session. Over to you, Numer.
Thank you, Yogita, for the kind introduction, and hello, everyone. I want to share my experience of ChatGPT with all of you because I think that ChatGPT has already been a very disruptive technology, and it will have more and more impact on our lives as we go on. So it is. It is time that we have a meaningful conversation about ChatGPT and some of the other uh, generative AI models to talk about some of the pros and cons and how to effectively use them. Because I think they are already here to stay. We're not very certain at this point what role they will play in our lives uh, as uh, as online workers or having soft skills. But they are that we are sure that they are here to stay, and we simply have to talk about them. We can not talk about them. So a little bit of introduction about myself that will help you get my experience about ChatGPT. I'm a student of pharmaceutical sciences, and I work part time as a content writer. And as you can imagine, both of these fields have been heavily impacted by ChatGPT and other generative AI models. So some of the background related to ChatGPT. I don't want to bore you with a lot of jargon, but some things that you need to understand in order to understand some of the limitations that I will present later on this in this presentation is the basics of ChatGPT and the generative models in general. So it is developed by OpenAI. This is the parent company behind it. It is closely related to Microsoft. It's separate company but related to Microsoft. And it is ChatGPT itself. It is based on deep learning architecture, and that is known as Transformer. Now, Transformer, it was actually put out by Google. It was made public in research paper by Google, but OpenAI was the first one to utilize it and make a product out of it that they made public early on. So they took the advantage, and they were the first movers. Some of the things that you need to understand is these AI models, they are based on a lot of training data, and in this case we are talking about the text based AI model, and that is based on a lot of the text data from the internet. That includes all of the text from your tweets, from the Reddit communities, from Facebook, from the PDFs that have been uploaded on the internet. uh, some of the literature studies, especially those that are open, like they have open access, it can go into the PDFs, and it even has the text of some of the books. So you can ask about some of the books and it will tell you, so meaning that it has been fed on books as well. Even the sci-fi and fiction books, it has the information. So you need to understand what is behind it, that will help you understand some of the limitations that ChatGPT might have. So this is some of the background. We will go into what was my first contact with ChatGPT. My first interaction came on 8th of December last year. I know this date because I just pulled it up from WhatsApp, because my friend had just messaged me a link of YouTube video where a programmer was explaining how good is ChatGPT, and he was using it to write code actually. But I'm not related to code, at least not at this point in my life. I might go into it later on, but I was more interested into some of the other text based applications that ChatGPT might have. So while watching the video, I just opened up ChatGPT, and it was free, and I really needed one email to sign up. So I simply sign up. I think OpenAI intentionally made it very easy to get started because they wanted people to experiment it, to play around with it, because it was the first of its kind. Now there have been a lot of different tools, but I think OpenAI wanted people to really play around with it. That's why they made it so easy to get started. So when I get got started, I asked a few questions, and I was initially amazed by its ability to remember the context of my conversation. So, if you know the personal assistants or the assistants that we are used to previously, like Google Assistant and Siri and all that, they do not remember the context of information that of the conversation that well. But ChatGPT is on another level, that it will continue one discussion with you. So I was amazed by that initially, but later on I decided to ask it one question related to the receptors on the B cells. So little bit of background into that. B cells are a type of immune cells that create antibodies in our body. So I was confused about why does it have so many different types of receptors. During that day in my college, I was studying what the receptors of B cells, and I knew that antigen presenting cells, they present their pathogen, the digested pathogen, to B cell directly. But then why come B cell has the receptor to direct the to detect the antigen directly without any involvement of the antigen presenting cells? The way ChatGPT addressed this question, it was so good that I was immediately amazed by it, and I just kept asking it more and more questions, and it was very good. So my first contact was very positive one. So moving on into how I use it now. So I just told you what are the two domains of my life. I've been using that in ChatGPT in my studies. So whenever I come across a difficult concept while reading the book, pharmacology book or mechanism of any drug, I simply paste that text into ChatGPT and I simply ask it to simplify it for me. It does that very good, very brilliantly, and you can ask the questions then based on that text, because it remembers the context of the conversation, and you can ask the questions, and it has been very helpful in this regard. Some of the other uses are, I can ask it to create a table out of the text, so it can break through a lot of the clutter and give me the very specific information that I want in the form of a table. So right now it can only provide the text and the table. It cannot even see or provide the images at this point. I'm talking about the Chat GPT only, not the advanced model that is in GPT-4. So another use case I found was the revision, when I simply gave it the notes that I had in text form, and I created MCQs and even created flashcards for revision. So this is a very general use, but as you can imagine, there can be a lot of different uses. So in my work, the second domain of my life, I've been using it to broaden the literature research of my white paper. So for example, I wrote the clinical white paper on lung cancer, and while I was reading some of the literature sources, there was a lot of different types of bronchoscopy that were there. I didn't know a lot about its background, so I asked ChatGPT what are the different types that are being used right now and that were used previously in past and not in clinical practice now. It gave me a list. I then took that list and went back into PubMed. I looked it up and I read the literature from the peer-reviewed articles. So it gave me a sort of foundation for beginning my literature research. So it's one point for me to know all of the different types of bronchoscopy, and then I could go to the literature research or the peer-reviewed articles that I highly trust uh, to carry out the further literature research. Another use case I found is it's good in improving the vocabulary and and finding out the grammatical mistakes. I think there are other tools that do it better, but it's also another option. And also another use case is I used it to create titles for my blog. So what I did is I provided the first paragraph of my blog, and I asked it to create like suggest me five titles, very engaging title based on my first paragraph. So it gave me those titles, and sometimes I like it, sometimes I don't, and I do not simply take copy paste from there. I can tweak it a little bit and make it according to what I want. But these are some of the very general things. But as you can imagine, there can be a lot of different use cases. Like uh, you have a model that basically knows a lot of different text that is limited to 2021. That is one thing to keep in mind. In the background, it is important to know that its knowledge is limited to 2021. It's not connected to the internet. Again, I'm talking about ChatGPT specifically, not its advanced version. So a model having a lot of information, you can find a lot of different use cases for it. These are some of the very general uses that I gave you, but as you can imagine, there can be a lot of different uses. Then when I was working on chat gpt and trying to play around with it and get used to it, there was one thing that I noticed, that the responses were very generic and bland. And I also noticed on online that people were also talking about the same thing, that they were initially amazed, like I was initially amazed, but later on they found that it was getting boring at some point, like the responses were very generic. And then looking into that, and in the online communities, I found something called prompt engineering. So let's define what prompt engineering is. It is basically an art, or you can simply say a skill of formulating precise questions to get the specific and creative responses from chat gpt. Not just chat gpt, you can use this similar for other types of generative ai. Either they are text based, or image based, or even video based. You can use this skill to specifically ask the question, a very optimized question. You can ask question or prompt, they are the same thing, and you will get a better response than a very generic or bland response. So some of the things that you can do while going into the prompt engineering is you can assign the chat gpt a persona. uh, Try doing this, because it really works. I don't know how this is so good. Like when you ask chat gpt to pretend like you are a tutor in pharmacology, it will give better responses related to pharmacology compared to what it will give in default mode. I don't know how this works, but it does work. This is you can try using this for yourself. And you can also specify the tone, what you want the outcome to be in. You can provide specific guidelines. You can simply shape your response by providing it a lot of parameters to stay within those parameters, and you can also provide what not to include in your responses. So by optimizing the prompt, you can really get a very good response from it. By optimizing the prompt, you can get the specific response that you want from it. So this is the skill of prompt engineering. And let's talk about why this is important. Firstly, we talked about if you don't do not give the specific response, the prompt, it will keep giving on the very generic and bland responses. That's not really desirable, and that's boring even. So we will look into why this is important in some other terms. I think with this AI revolution, and particularly in generative AI, it is important that professionals from every field, they are able to communicate with AI. See, you have an AI model that knows a lot of different stuff. It can give you a very basic and generic answer, but at the same time, it can give you very detailed answer, very specific, or very specialized answer. So what is the difference between that generic and very basic, very specialized answer? That difference lies in how you ask that question. So the quality of your prompt is directly affecting the response that you are getting from it. It is a massive data set that contains all of the information. How you get the information that you want from it, that is highly dependent on how you ask the question. So I think it is essential, it will be even more essential in the future that we are able to communicate with the AI, because AI, as we have idea that it is going to have a lot of impact in our lives, in content creation, and even beyond content creation. So I think it is essential that we know how to effectively communicate with AI, and that skill lies within prompt engineering. There are some types of prompts that you can try with ChatGPT. These are called the chain of thought command, chain of thought prompt. You can essentially do this by simply asking ChatGPT to explain the response. When you ask the question, you can also ask to step by step explain how you got to the answer instead of directly giving you the answer, because if it directly gives you the answer, there is some possibility that the answer may be wrong. But if you ask it to explain the answer, then I think it will give you better result. And just try it for yourself. I think there are certain very generic rules or very general rules, but I think prompt engineering, it will continue to evolve, because as we already know that chat gpt, this is just the first wave of this generative AI. Things will get better. I think with the chat gpt, OpenAI got a lot of attention, and with attention came the investment, and with investment, I think the things will get better. And with competition also, people from companies from other uh, from other companies are also getting into this field. Google is important example here. So I think this technology will get better with time. And as it evolves, the art or the skill of prompt engineering should also keep changing with it. So there's no hardcore rules for prompt engineering for this specific reason, but there are certain rules. The one I would like to mention is, if you are staying online and you're on Twitter or LinkedIn or some of the other online platforms, you might have noticed that people are putting out a lot of prompts that are very useful in certain cases. They are good, but they might not be the prompt that you want for your use case. So I will suggest you to take a look at that prompt, but do not think that that prompt will be exactly do what you want from AI. Simply learn from that prompt, learn how that prompt has been structured, and try to replicate it, try to tweak certain things here and there, and make your own prompt. And this is really a reiterative process. You make one prompt, you ask, you go to chat gpt or other model that you're working on, and you see the response. If the response is not what you want, simply change the prompt. There's no one prompt to rule everything. There's no one prompt to even get one specific type of response. You have to keep tweaking it and keep learning and keep evolving with it. This is, I think, one general rule. Other than that, as the technology keeps evolving, I think the skill will also have to evolve with it. Then let's talk about the limitations. That I think a lot of people are talking about the limitations, and we also have to. Uh, the first one, I told you in the background that it has been fed on a lot of text data, and the problem with text data can be that uh, that text has been written by humans, and of course it has some sort of biases built into it. And since the model is based on the text that has biases, the model will also have the biases in it. This is important because even if OpenAI or other companies that have these models, they use certain filters to block those biases, it will find way to come in your responses in one way or another. So because it is part of the basic data that was used to train the model. So I think one good example is the it assumes the gender roles. If you ask write a short story about a doctor, it will assume that doctor is male more times than it will assume that it's a female. And similarly, if you ask it to write a story about a nurse, it will most of the times it will assume that to be a female. So I think just because the biases are there in the text data that was used to train it, the biases will be there in its responses. I think the parent companies, they are trying to use the filters, but I don't think that will go away. It will find a way to get into the responses one way or another. So the second limitation that I want to talk about is that is very important, related to our field of work, the medical content writing or creation in general within the medical field. And that limitation is the inaccuracies and the hallucination. So let me talk about the inaccuracies at first. It can get affect very wrong. So it it is particularly bad at solving math question or arithmetic questions. It is bad at explaining what a person, what one particular person or personality is, uh, unless they are very famous. It is bad at explaining a famous place even. This is a very big, I think, limitation built into ChatGPT and similar text generative AI. Another thing that is hallucination, that is related to factual inaccuracies, is when it gives the factual inaccuracy, it gives it in a very confident manner, and that really tells us that it is hallucinating in the background. It really thinks that the inaccurate information it is providing us is the correct information. Even if you point it out, sometimes it apologizes, but in case of hallucination, it does not apologize. It insists that it is right even though it is wrong. We know that it is wrong. Some of the basic things that we already know, it can mess them up, and it insists that it is right. And this phenomenon has been called as hallucinations online. So it is very dangerous with chat gpt. In my experience, I found a lot of hallucination. It hallucinates a lot on the factual information, and this is very damaging in medical field, where we are actively trying to equip our readers with the information that they can use to make very well informed decisions about their health. So I think we cannot afford the uh, hallucination of chat gpt into our content. So this is the one thing we have to pay extra attention to as medical content creators. Another limitation is it doesn't cite the sources. It doesn't do that by default. Again, I'm talking about chat gpt. Some of the other models, they do. I think Bing, that has incorporated the OpenAI model into it, it cites the sources, and those sources, according to my experience, are the correct ones. And Bard also cites the sources, but ChatGPT by default it does not cite the sources. But when you ask, this is the interesting part. When you ask the ChatGPT to cite the source, particularly if it's a very specific question related to a very typical medical prompt, it will give out wrong articles, wrong journal article citations. You can ask it to provide the link of that journal article. It will give you the article, but when you click on it, it will not lead to anything. It will simply show the error message 404 or something related to that. The article did not was not here, or did not find, or something like that within the journal page. So this is really a big limitation, again, particularly if you are using it for literature research. I talked about how I use it in literature research, but uh, you have to keep in mind that it can make up the sources, and this is also a part of hallucinations. Like, it is hallucinating about over something that does not exist, and it is pretending, or it is thinking that it does exist, and it is not even admitting that it is wrong. I've talked about it sometimes apologizes when we point out that it is wrong, but in case of hallucinations, it insists that it is right, even though it is not. You can simply click on the link that it provides, and you can tell it that that link is not opening. It will provide you a different link, but that will not open either. So this is a big limitation. Also, just I talked about previously, it struggles with the arithmetic problems that can lead to very funny or shocking mistakes. It can get even very simple things wrong. So and this is another thing that you have to take into consideration. So just the limitations, we can compare it with some of the pros and cons. On one side, it increases the productivity, but on the other side, it has a lot of the limitations into it. So looking into these limitations, should we just not use ChatGPT? And because there are a lot of limitations, and these are very scary limitations. It doesn't provide the citations, it hallucinates, it can mess up even the basic arithmetic calculations, the mathematical calculations, and it has biases that we do not like. So should we just not use it? I think let's talk about this in the next slide. So the impact it can have on generative AI, on the impact generative AI will have on content creators. So let's talk about the first thing, the elephant in the room. That is, will it replace us? I have my opinion, and that is at least in 2023, it will not replace us. So no need to worry as of now. But uh, it it is looking scary into far future. I will talk about it in detail in the next few slides, and also should we not use it altogether because of the limitations. But let me first give you a few reasons why I think it will not replace us, at least in 2023. The first and foremost thing is it does not have a perspective of a human that has a lot of experience in a particular field that they are writing about. Its content is, it's unimaginative, really. You can use prompt engineering. You can ask it to write from a perspective of a Buddha who lived whole his life in meditating in a cave, and that will give it some perspective. But really, it's not close to what a human having that sort of experience can write. But this is also a bad news for the content creators who are relying on the generic content creation, who are writing very generic content. I think this is a bad news for them, because while ChatGPT cannot do a lot of the creative stuff, it can do a lot of the generic stuff. So this is a bad news for them. I think it will replace those creators that are relying on very bland and generic content. But for those that are creative and those that have a specific perspective on things that is unique only to them, I think it cannot mimic their perspective, and I think for this reason it cannot replace them. And some other limitations that I talked about why it cannot replace us, at least in 2023, are some of the limitations. Know that these limitations, they will be like improved in the later stages, because remember, this is just the first wave of AI, generative AI. It has already only been around for 6 months or even less. So in the next waves it will continue to get better. But one thing I think it will not get is the unique problem solving. I think that is related to humans only. This is my opinion again. I think if you throw any problem at it that was not used in training it, then I think it will not answer you. This is again my experience, and I will give you a reason for why this is the case later on. So impact of again generative AI and content creators. We talked about it will not replace us, at least in 2023. Then I also talked about it will have a lot of impact. So if it is not replacing us, then what is it doing? And the answer is it is taking away a lot of the mundane tasks from us. It is increasing the productivity, and it is giving us a lot of time to perform the creative tasks that require a lot of brain power, not the very basic tasks that are boring anyway, and we do not like to do them, and we are not motivated by doing them. So it can take away those tasks, but we can give that time to more creative tasks. So I think it will be beneficial in this regard. And while it will not replace humanity, but I believe that the humans who are using AI, they will replace the humans who are not using AI, or even those who are not effectively using AI. So going back to the that slide again, we look at the pros and cons, and we wondered, should we ignore it altogether because it has a lot of cons. So my opinion in this regard is no, we should not ignore it, because we can make up for some of the limitations, but by staying attentive to responses it gives us. But we should make use of the pro that is very important, and that is it increases the productivity. So this is my opinion, that we simply cannot ignore chat gpt, and just because it has a lot of limitations, we have to make use of it. We have to adapt in order to simply stay competitive. Not like it's going to be a big thing. I think because it will at some point it will become a baseline of a task or skill for all of the professionals, and it will be required to stay competitive, not go a lot ahead in the race, but even to stay competitive. I think we'll have to use chat gpt and other AI generative models. This is my opinion, and think this is a very important one, that we stay focused on the productivity side of it, and we make use of this advantage that AI is providing us. And the limitations, like I just discussed, they will get better because this is just the first wave, and in the second waves, I think and the type of attention that these companies are getting that are behind it, and type of investment that they are getting, I think the limitations will be removed in the future. So we'll have to take into regard the increase in productivity, and that's why we have to use it. We cannot ignore it, and we'll have to use it to simply stay competitive, and we'll have to adopt by this new technology. So this is just a flow chart of the impact of ChatGPT and other similar models can have on content creators. I do not suggest to use in all of the information that it provides. Be attentive. The responses might have biases, limitations, factual inaccuracies, and all that. But if you do that part right, I think you can use it to increase your productivity. You can use it to proofread a lot of stuff, improve your grammar, improve your wording, and that advantage is there. So, in conclusion, I think we already have used ChatGPT. I expect everyone has at least used at least once ChatGPT. So, we I think know that it is very good at creating the basic and very generic content, and it can reduce the times spent on mundane task and give us more time for the creative task. But I also have some apprehension, because I personally think that the technology is moving too fast. uh, by the way, I'm not the only one who thinks this. Some important personalities in the Silicon Valley also have the same opinion. The technology is moving too fast. No one is against the advancement of technology. I think that's the one thing that really fuels our civilization. We're all about advancements in technology, and historically, technology has always been ahead of the authorities and policy making, and it has been ahead this time as well, no surprise. But what is different this time is it is moving at such a rapid pace that it has created a lot of uncertainties, and I have my apprehension as well. I am overall positive about the future that is to come, but I think the it is moving at a rapid pace. And let me give you some perspective of why it is or how it is moving at rapid pace. Because so far we've been talking about Chat GPT only. It is an amazing model, but while considering the rapid advancement of generative AI, we also have to take into account some of the other advanced models, that is ChatGPT 4 or simply GPT-4. This is the advanced version of ChatGPT, and it is people are talking that it is somewhat touching the artificial general intelligence. So let me explain to you what is artificial general intelligence. So what we have right now is generative AI. It is good in only one domain. It's essentially a probability model. It will give you the next word, next sentence, next paragraph based on what you provided it before, based on what came before it. So it will predict the next word based on the previous word. It does not think about that word. It does not have the ability to comprehend what it is saying. It might make it sound like it knows and is thinking in the background, but it really isn't. It is just a probability model. But how artificial general intelligence or AGI is different from this is AGI will have some sort of capability to even comprehend the things that it is doing, and this is why I think it might have the ability to solve even the unique problems. So previously, I just told you that generative AI at this point and ChatGPT cannot solve the unique problems, but I think that AGI that does not exist at this point. People have been talking that Auto GPT is some sort of baby AGI, or Chat or GPT-4 is some sort of baby AGI, but AGI in its true form does not exist as of now in 2023. But if it were to exist, it will be able to solve the unique problems, and that is really a concern regarding that, because that is really a scary thing, but it's a positive thing. We do want to get at it at some point, but we'll have to get in a way that the interest of or the goal of an AGI does not misalign with the goals of humanity. So it should not have its goals that are different from goals of the humanity. Because if that happens, things can get bad, and they can get bad real fast. I think uh, with the competition that we are seeing in the field of AI, I think it can progress very rapidly, and things can get out of hands very rapidly. And some of the things that I also think that we have done wrong at this point already is, one thing is we have told these machines how to code. So they are based on code themselves. You can think of them as a creature that is made up of code, and to that creature we have already told how to code. So meaning that if it wanted to extend itself, if it had any motive to expand, it can simply code itself. It can simply extend itself by coding more and more of its part. So that is one thing that I personally think that we've done wrong. Another thing is, we have given it the access to the internet. ChatGPT doesn't have the access to internet. It is limited to 2021, but the other models like GPT-4 and Bard and related models, they have the access to internet. So we cannot control what they are consuming. So if they have some misaligned goals from us, they have access to all of our information that is already there on the internet. They can access it without even our permission. If they get out of hands, they can access it without our permission in future, if they code themselves to do that in future. So these are the two things that I think that we already have done wrong. We do want to do these things eventually, but I think this is moving a little more rapidly than we wanted it to be. So we just need to slow down things and really catch up with it. The authorities will not catch up with it, because they've been struggling with the copyright issue, and I think they will continue to struggle. But even the general population, it is not really catching up, and I think we need to slow down a little bit and give us some time before going into this rapid advancement of AI that might lead us into creating AGI. So in future of generative AI, there are other tools that you should know of, and these are the tools that create the images based on the text what you provide it. So text is the prompt. You give it one prompt, and it will create the image for you. And this is Mid Journey, Stable Diffusion, and DALI, and all these different things. And there is also a tool that is made public that is called Runway. It will create the video from the text you provided. So these are some of the advancements in generative AI, not in the AGI. I talked about AGI earlier, but now I'm talking about the generative AI only. So there are also some models from Google that are creating videos from the text that you provided, but I don't think they are public at this point. At least I haven't tried them. But Runway is the only one that is public at this point. In the So the video creating is not that good. It's very like easily detectable that it's created by AI, but the audio part is very good. It's scary good at this point. Even in the first wave of AI, generative AI, it is scary good. And some of the companies in this regard are 11 Labs, and Bark is open source tool that you can use to create audio based AI responses. You can also create music from it, and this is really good, and it is very good at mimicking the voices of humans and giving and making it sound like this is really coming out from humans. So I think that this is some future of generative AI. So I wanted to use this discussion as uh, uh, something to stimulate responses from you. You can ask questions, you can give your own opinions, just to have some sort of discussion going. You can talk about the limitations, you can talk about some of the advantages. I think my personal opinion is that we have to use it not to only just excel. I think we have to use it only to survive, because everyone will be using it in a few years if they're not using already, and this will become a baseline skill that everyone will need in future. People will be communicating with AI more and more, and well, when they are communicating with AI, I think the skill of prompt engineering, in my experience, what I found is going to be very relevant in the near future. So thank you so much for listening. And now, if you have any question, or even if you have some opinions, you can share with me and you can get the discussion going.
Yes. So again, I want to thank you, Numer, for this educational talk and the extensive discussion. I'm sure we all get an idea about what is the Chat GPT and how we can use it in our work. Before we conclude this webinar, I would like to inform everyone that our next presentation will be on 31st of May 2023, and the presenter will be Divya. I would like to thank you all for your time and kind attention today. Hope to see you all at our next presentation. Thank you so much.